How's it going, folks? I'm Cody Campbell with High Ground Gaming. Today we are unboxing and reviewing the Redragon Castor K631 Pro. This is a wireless mechanical gaming keyboard that is in a 65% form factor. I'm going to start by walking you through the specs, then I'll open it up, let you take a look at what comes inside. After that, we'll go to the review portion where I'll give you my thoughts on it, and then we'll go to High Ground Gaming's final score. Stick around. So there is a wired-only version of this keyboard, so make sure to look out for that if you're going to buy it and you want one or the other. But the wireless version has 3 different connectivity modes. There is a USB Type-C connection, there is a Bluetooth 3.0 connection for productivity, and then there is a 2.4G connection for gaming. This comes with red linear switches, but they are hot swappable with any 3 or 5 pin MX style switch. It has a 1600 milliamp per hour battery, ABS keycaps, and RGB. That's about it for the specs though. Why don't we go ahead and open it up? So we've got some paperwork in here, some stickers. We've got the removable USB Type-A to USB Type-C cable. It looks like probably some extra keycaps in here. Yep, got some extra keycaps there. Then in the bag, we've got a keycap remover and we've got a switch remover to make those swappable switches go easy. Well, let's take a look at the keyboard itself. Looks like we've got a general plastic housing. It's got a little flex to it, but it seems pretty rigid on the whole. We've got some nice grippy feet back here. We've got the dongle for the 2.4G, and I always appreciate when they put the little pocket on the back there. It makes it easy to keep it all together, especially if you're traveling with it. Looks like the feet stand up to one position. Give it a slight incline there. Let's take a look at these switches. I think the overall layout of this looks pretty smart, but I'm gonna have to hook it up to my computer and play some games with it before I can know for sure. Stick around for the review section. All right, folks, I've spent some time with the Redragon Castor Pro and I'm ready to talk about it. But first, remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already. All right, real quick, before we dive in though, I just wanna point something out. This is clearly not the Castor Pro that I had in the unboxing section. That was this one. And this one is completely bricked. It does not work. I downloaded the software for it. I tried to do a firmware up on it and it just died. I contacted Redragon about this. First, they asked me if I had downloaded the wrong software because apparently that can kill their keyboards. That was not the case. It was just something went wrong in the firmware update and this one died and they were out of this color scheme. So they sent me the white and teal version. So that's the one I actually reviewed. It's just a cosmetic difference. Otherwise it is the exact same keyboard. This one firmware update went fine, connects to software fine. For the sake of this review, I will not be factoring in the fact that that one bricked into our final score. I wasn't really sure how to go about doing that, and these kinds of mistakes can happen with any company, so I really just wanted to give Redragon the benefit of the doubt. But at the same time, it definitely felt like in the spirit of transparency, I really needed to let all of you know that that in fact did happen, and this is a different keyboard than the one that I unboxed. It might negatively speak to Redragon's quality assurance that that happened, but overall, there isn't really a way for us to factor it into the final score, so our score will not reflect that. All right, let's go ahead and just dive into the build quality though. First of all, this thing is pretty sturdy. It's made of plastic, but that plastic is fairly rigid. There's a tiny bit of flex, but not enough that I expect this to develop any sort of bowing over time or anything like that. It has a super minimalist design. I personally am a fan of the fact that the 65% keyboards have the arrow keys directly on here. The 60% keyboards, a lot of them require you to use the function key in order to access arrow key functionality, and I hate that. I use arrow keys all the time, and so that really bugs me. The one downside is that makes the shift key shorter, because the shift key usually takes up about 3 key spaces. In this case, it's taking up 2. So for productivity uses, that might take a little getting used to, but I feel like if this is your main keyboard, you're going to get used to it pretty fast. None of the materials in it are super premium, but that's okay. It's sort of a budget keyboard, and that's sort of what you expect. It is fairly well made for what you're paying. The one actual downside to it, the one thing I really don't like about its overall design, is how steep it is. It is a pretty tall keyboard, and it doesn't come with any sort of wrist rest or anything like that. It does have the feet, but there's only 1 degree of incline that you can change it to, and it's still not quite enough to make up for how tall it is. Wrist rests aren't super expensive though. You can get one of those separately if you want. Now let's move on to the wireless performance. Now this thing has 3 different connectivity modes. It has the USB Type-C connection, which is obviously going to be the fastest and most stable connection, but you have a cable. But there are also 2 wireless connections. There is a Bluetooth 5.0 connection, which is going to give you a longer battery life, but more latency. That makes it really good for using the Bluetooth when you're just doing basic productivity. But when you switch to gaming, you might want that lower latency connection, and that's where the 2.4G comes in. 2.4G is fast enough that there is minimal latency. It's not super noticeable. You can use it for competitive gaming and stuff like that and still have a really, really good gaming experience. I tested this out playing some Ghostwire Tokyo for a while, and the whole time I was playing, I didn't notice any latency issues on the 2.4G. I've also had some issues with Redragon in the past with their 2.4G connections being a little spotty, but I didn't have that in this case. It seemed pretty solid the whole time, so that was good. Now let's talk about the switches in this guy, because that's a little weird. Some of the stuff on their page might lead people to believe that there are Otemu switches in this. That isn't the case. These switches are actually made by Redragon. I'm not sure why these ones are yellow where Redragon's regular linear switches are red, but I can talk a little about how they feel. They offer less resistance than, say, Cherry MX. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Some people like less resistance in their linear keys, but that's definitely something to keep in mind. If you're looking for that Cherry MX level of tension, these are going to be a little loose. It's going to be a little easier to, make typos and stuff like that. They're not the best that I've tested, but they're perfectly serviceable. And the one major benefit to them is that they are completely hot swappable. That means you could buy this keyboard now, and if it turns out you don't like them, you could always buy a different set of MX switches and swap them out, and then you'll have Cherry MX or whatever other brand you choose in this keyboard. The only other major thing to talk about is that this does come with Redragon's software. Here's a quick clip where I go over that. So here is the Redragon software for the Castor Pro, specifically the wireless version. As you can see here, with Redragon software, you do have to make sure that you get the correct specific software for your specific keyboard. Otherwise, it isn't going to work. Now, this software is pretty simple. You have 3 profiles that you can set over here. You have a macro editor down here, so you can set up your macros. And then you can just click on whatever key you want to adjust for different key assignments and stuff like that. Other than that, the only thing the software really does is lighting. You can click right here and this will show you a whole bunch of different lighting effects that are available here. You can adjust brightness, speed, and then you can adjust color over here. And that's pretty much it. It's a very simple software. So yeah, there isn't a ton of functionality in the software. It is a bit of a bummer that you can't extend how long this thing's staying awake. As you might have noticed in this video, I keep having to hit a button to keep it awake because it turns off every minute or so, and it would be nice to be able to change that. That's about it for the specs though. Let's get down to the verdict. So the Redragon Castor Pro MSRP's at $51.99. That's actually a pretty good price. It's right in line with other budget 65% keyboards, and there are some pros and cons that would make this a valid choice. First of all, the switches in this, as I mentioned, They're not the best, but they are hot swappable, so they do offer an upgrade path. There are other keyboards out there that you can get for around the same price that might come with better switches, but maybe those switches are replaceable, maybe they're not. So that is a little bit of something that you're gonna have to research. The other thing is I couldn't find a whole lot of 65% wireless gaming keyboards, specifically mechanical gaming keyboards, that have the 2.4G wireless option. That is a really big deal for gamers. 2.4G is a much lower latency than Bluetooth, and so Bluetooth might be fine for people doing basic action games, or if you're big into something like Minecraft or what have you, it might not be a big deal to connect over Bluetooth. But if you're playing a competitive game, a shooter, a racing game, then having a keyboard with really low latency is important. And the 2.4G is much faster than the Bluetooth, so that is a big pro for this one. So with all that in mind, we decided to give it a 4 out of 5. There's some stuff that we're docking points for. Overall, the construction is pretty good, but it's nothing particularly special. As we mentioned, it can get uncomfortable with how tall it is, so you probably want to buy a wrist rest separately. Also, if you do choose to upgrade it, you're going to have to pay for switches, which is going to be another added expense. So even though this thing isn't super expensive as is, upgrading it to make it more comfortable and make it into a more premium option is definitely going to cost you. Also, the software just doesn't offer a whole heck of a lot of functionality. Overall, though, we do think that it is a good value, and if you're looking to get a moderately well-constructed keyboard at a reasonable price that's going to perform pretty well, this isn't a bad option. So why don't you go ahead and drop down into the comments and let us know what you think, though. Is this a keyboard that you might be interested in? Do you think this is a good idea for people on a budget, or do you think they should just save up for something a little more premium? While you're at it, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. We have a lot more content coming to the channel real soon, and we'd hate for you to miss any of it. All right, everyone, thanks for watching. Happy gaming.